All right. so, um, the beginning of social psychology is important because it reminds us of where we're going, and without these beginnings, then we would not be where we are today. And to be quite honest, in my opinion, the field of social psychology is very healthy. There's a lot of good work being published that has a lot of applied applications to it. So we have to know where we came from. So I'm not going to test you on years or anything like that, at least as it relates to this. But I just wanted you to know kind of the first, where we got started. So it was around the beginning of the 1900s. So the first social psych textbook came out then, and in all honesty, this textbook was mostly about group decision making. So about jury decision making, boardroom decision making. Now, this became a subtopic of social psychology, but once again, the research just wasn't there to be a full textbook like the one you have. However, the first social psych experiment was done by a man named Triplett, and I do test on names. I don't test on years. And so Triplett, what he did is he was looking at using a hand crank, and you see it in front of you, that's a hand crank. What a hand crank is you grab those little knobs and you turn it as fast as you can, and it generates energy. And what he found was that you are more likely to spin that hand crank faster and generate more energy when other people are watching you versus when you're just by yourself. And although Triplett didn't really know what he was looking at as we know it today, this is what's called social facilitation. And we'll talk about this for the exam 4 material. But social facilitation is the idea that you, once again, perform better at easier tasks when other people are watching you versus when you're alone. And this is often credited with the first social psychology study. But the father of social psych really didn't come about and hit the field running until like the 1920s. His name was Kurt Lewin, and he, once again, he's considered the founder. And what he was interested in is he was big in the group psychology movement. So this is, once again, that jury decision making, boardroom decision making, and he was interested in something called subjective interpretations of situations where you have the two people in a room, the same thing's happening, but when you leave that room, one person leaves feeling differently than the other. So let me give you an example. Let's say that there were two of you in my office, and I said, both of you need to work on your papers. Here are some feedback for you guys. There you go. When you guys leave my office, one of you may have said, wow, Chris was yelling at me. And someone may have said, wow, that was really helpful. I took that constructively. But how can that be that two different people who hear the same thing and are in the same room and hear the same person talking about it leave with different opinions or ideas or attitudes? And that's where he really came in. And so he really emphasized the power of the situation. All right, and that's what social psychology is, right? The power of the situation. And so what he did is he focused on that, but his biggest contribution was perhaps the application of theory. And theory, the way it works, is as part of the scientific process, and theory is built to make hypotheses that are testable in research. And I think that was one of his biggest strengths, is that he used theory, or he wanted theory to be applied. And what that did is that put social psychology on more of a scientific route than some of the, let's say, like Freudian approaches, like, for example, the psychoanalytic theory of personality. Although Freud talked about it, there was really no scientific evidence for it, right? And so he didn't want that. And what Lewin wanted was this interpretation of the situations to be grounded in theory. And he even has a quote that says, there's nothing so practical as a good theory. Now, where Lewin's strongest application of theory came in was using a simple equation. Now, this equation, it looks mathematical, but it's more conceptual. You don't plug in numbers. But what he said is that behavior, okay, equals the situation times your personality. All right. So once again, behavior equals the situation times your personality. What that means, once again, is that the situation, your environment, will dictate how you behave. Your personality, who you are as a person, dictates how you behave. And you can even put the two things together to dictate how you behave. And that's what he said is going to be the most important piece of this, is that when we're trying to predict behavior, it's not only about the situation, it's all about how the situation and the person go together. And that's what Lewin's influence was. Now, we're going to end this with a journey. We're going to end this lecture, with a journey that your book takes you on. And what your book is going to talk about is something that they call the basic assumptions of humans. In other words, something characteristic that all humans have. And what I'm going to treat this as are themes. And these themes are going to come out throughout the entire semester. I think one way that students learn best in my courses is I pick a common theme that I reiterate over and over with different pieces. So we're going to see these three themes throughout the entire duration of the semester. Your book only talks about two. I'm actually going to add a third, all right, to make this work. So the first basic human motivation is that people want to feel good. All right, so people like feeling good. And how are we going to feel good? Well, it's going to permeate throughout all of our social psych. For example, let's take the topic of pro-social behavior, which I believe is on exam 3. Helping people makes you feel good. Let's take attraction. That's going to be exam 4 stuff. When we're around other people, whether it's a dating relationship or your best friend or your mom or whoever, you feel good when you're around people. So people want to feel good. And part of feeling good is that we often discount the importance of this as it is a predictor of why we behave. So people just want to feel good. That makes sense to us. This is why if you look around, you see like obese people all over the place because eating makes them perhaps feel good. That's why early in relationships, sex or sexual contact, doesn't have to be sex, is very important. And it's a high priority because it makes us feel good. All right. Now, the second one is that people want to be accurate, or they want to feel right. And part of feeling right is going to be, obviously that makes us feel good. But what we're going to do is we're going to see in some upcoming lectures is that what people will do is for certain situations, people will focus and spend a lot of time and put a lot of mental energy into doing something, like when you study for a test. But then there's going to be other times where you're not going to put in that kind of mental energy. So feeling accurate or wanting to be right is going to be very important. And the final one is that people are lazy. In the previous example with needing to be accurate, I said that there are times where you put in a lot of effort and energy into thinking about something, but there's only so much we could do. All right, and we're going to see that people are lazy a lot, and that humans in particular, there's no way that our brains are capable of attuning to every possible environmental stimuli that comes our way. And so what we have to do about that is we have to take shortcuts. And we're going to find this to be a very, very common thing. So let me give you an example. We'll see how these motivations kind of work. Let's say that you were to go to a doctor, and this doctor were to tell you, you have a clean bill of health. You are a perfect specimen of health. There is nothing wrong with you whatsoever. All right, what should the 3 basic human motivations would that be? Well, being told that you are a perfect specimen of physical health, there's nothing wrong with you, that makes us feel good. And so we're not going to be like, you know what, doc, I want a second opinion. We're not going to do that because it makes us feel good that we are in good health. And there we go, right? So, and additionally, a part of that is that when you say things like, oh, you are a perfect bill of health, you don't think about it anymore. You're just like, okay, good, I'm healthy. And then you're done. So it's a part of feeling good, but it's also we're a little bit lazy. But let's say the same doctor now tells you you have symptoms that are consistent with, let's say, HIV. We think you might be HIV positive. What are you going to do? Most people would say, I want a second opinion. But why? Why would you say I want a second opinion for bad news but not for good news? What if the good news is wrong? Right? And so when we deal with things like I want a second opinion, that makes us feel good because we're just like, maybe this doctor's wrong or the test was wrong. We're not lazy because we're putting in a lot of effort because we want to feel accurate. All right, that's why we need this second opinion. So, you think of instances like that, and you can see clearly how these basic human motivations work. And it's going to be the same for every type of social behavior that we see. Like, for example, how come, Trump supporters during the election were sitting there chanting with signs like, lock her up? Right? Why would they do that? Well, because it makes us feel good. And it's because they're lazy and they don't want to think of the alternatives. And I'm not just picking on Trump supporters. It could be the other way as well. What if you are a Clinton supporter now and you're just like, or you were a Clinton supporter, and now with all of Trump's like possible impeachment legal issues, people are just like, lock him up. Well, why are we doing that? It's the same reason, is that people want to feel good, and they don't want to see the other side. So people are lazy a little bit. And when we're accurate, when we think we're accurate anyway, it makes us feel good as well. So we're going to see these things come up all the time. And there's just going to be a lot of social behaviors that deal with this. So it's important to know these three. Your book only talks about the first two. I think that laziness is a very important one. Some people would argue with me that laziness and accuracy are just opposite sides of the same coin. But what we're going to see is that that's not going to be always the case. You can be accurate and lazy at the same time. You can also be inaccurate and put a lot of effort into it, so you're not lazy. So the two are not completely the opposite sides of the same coin, despite the fact that it makes a lot of sense, right, for people to argue with that. All right, so that's the end of the first one. The next chapter is going to be research methods. So when I post those videos, I'll let you guys know. Thank you.